I'll be a panda.
Do what?
Panda.
Yes.
I'll just sit here and eat all the first fruits.
Maybe a
I love
red
giraffes.
fox.
They're my
What are
favorite.
those?
Yeah.
What are those foxes that are on the panda fox? What are they?
Be a meerkat.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be so cute.
All right.
Is this one gonna be live?
Yeah, this one is live right now. So
Oh.
we're live right now. Welcome everybody.
Good to know.
What's
up? Thanks, Eric. Thank you.
Yeah, we are live. This is episode 3 of Ask a Pastor. Unfortunately, it's not just one pastor this time. It's 2 pastors and a group of people that tell them
We can call them all pastors today.
We're the
Everybody's the
hecklers.
pastor.
we're the hecklers. Yeah.
I'm not.
So this is kind of special because it's a little bit of a panel question, and I think we'll just talk about it for a second and then go from there. So Joanna came up with a question.
Okay, are you guys ready?
Sure.
So the question for the day is, how do you think Jesus would feel about being called a Christian?
Oh.
How would you feel? How would Jesus feel
How
about
would Jesus feel about being called a Christian,
being called a Christian?
in your opinion?
Are you asking us?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
everybody
I think
gets
he'd
to
be
chime
so offended. I think he'd be so mad just to set this, on fire right away. Because it was used to mock him. Being called a Christian was like the Romans would call people like these little minions, like Christians. Like you're like Christ. You're a Christian to people. So being called a Christian is kind of a mockery. I think he was cool with whatever though. I think that Jesus is pretty chill about things and he understands our heart, where it's coming from. But if somebody called me that in a way that they would have called them back in the day, I would have got offended probably. That's just my thought.
I was kind of in the same vein. When my first thought was, I don't think he'd like being put in a box.
That's what I was
that's
thinking.
what
Yeah,
I was
but then
thinking.
also I would feel like there'd be, because I feel like Jesus was sassy, and so there was probably a little part of him that was like, I must be doing something right.
Tell me more about this sassy Jesus.
Yeah, I don't know about sassy Jesus.
I need to know the sassy Jesus.
Sassy Jesus is the Jesus that flips some tables.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
okay,
he loves
there
sassy
you go.
Jesus.
You're healed. Now get out my face.
Yeah.
Like, he just was, since he was so straightforward. But I think that being called a Christian in that kind of derogatory way, he would have been like, well, at least I'm pushing some buttons. I'm
Yeah.
doing something right, so I'm just gonna keep going how I was going.
Yeah.
I think he would have liked it, but not for the reasons that maybe we would hope he liked it. I think he would, the ones he was hardest on and flipped some tables for were the ones that were stuck in law. And so I think he would view it as he was just given permission to speak into your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't do that to the ones
Yeah.
that weren't going towards that. If he spoke life and love, and if it was a place that he had authority to speak deeper, he did. And so I think he would be like, oh, you just gave me permission. Now let's flip some tables.
Yeah.
I agree. He would have taken it as a challenge. I don't think Jesus gets bothered by a lot of stuff. He did do a lot of teaching, and he just would have used it as another teaching moment, I believe.
Probably would turn it into a parable. Honestly.
Yeah.
Moments.
Yeah, I don't think Jesus would be offended, because I don't think he got offended very easily. So, but I do think he would probably ask a question. It depends on who asked it. If it was like a Pharisee asking a question, today, are you a Christian? He'd be like, well, what do you mean by Christian? Or explain more. He would ask a certain question to dig in deeper to find out what they're finding, what they're actually searching, and he would use it, like Joanna says, as a way to excited. Oh, good, this person's inviting me into a conversation. That's what I think he would do. So, but I don't think he'd be offended, and I think there would be. It depends on how you can ask that question in multiple different ways. Are you a Christian? Or are you a Christian? I think which one, depending on which way, which one you ask,
label are you
would be
going for?
a different response, right? So
That's
it depends
true.
on what you mean behind that. It's are you a Christian? I think you would take it as a challenge, and be like, okay, what do you mean by that? Who hurt you? Let me tell you about who I am, right?
Yeah.
But if you're like, are you a Christian? They're like, oh, I'm glad you finally I get to meet you. I think you would do it based on the person responding. You got thoughts, Eric?
Yeah.
Your gears are turning over there.
What?
Your gears are turning over there.
I knew this question was coming up, so I had a little time to think about it.
Cheater.
I know. But this morning it came to my mind that, okay, yes, it was originally used kind of derogatory to describe Jesus from the Romans, but I think that the preface of what they were describing was redeemed when he died on the cross. So whether he likes to be called a Christian as a label or not, I don't know, but the underlying aspect of what that means is to follow Christ, to follow God, was redeemed from what happened to him before, just like everything else that was redeemed on the cross. But I think that specifically was redeemed in an aspect when he died.
Yeah, I like that. I think that when they ask a question now, it's almost like the Pharisees asking, "Are you of this group of Pharisees, or are you of this group of Sadducees, or are you of this group?" That's kind of like what it gets asked. So I think Jesus' response would be like, "Well, I'm of the kingdom. I'm of the way." Like he didn't have to describe himself as Christian. This is what I mean. So he always responded with showing like his life, showing dying on the cross, showing what he was like, showing healing, and basically he wouldn't try to fit in, like you guys said, a box of what man made Christianity. I don't think Christianity was what Jesus had in mind. I think his kingdom was what he had in mind. And I think sometimes Christianity gets it right, and lots of times Christianity gets it wrong.
Yeah.
I admit, I think he would have put on his best Ted Hansen voice and said, "I didn't come with Christianity in mind. I came with humanity,
Humanity
in mind."
Exactly. There we go. That's the best.
That's good.
Good question. Thanks.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
A follow-up question.
Oh no.
Oh.
We all.
How do you guys feel about being called a Christian?
Oh gosh.
Oh, wow.
You're welcome.
I know when I was younger, I used to be like very proud of it.
Really?
Just because it's like, oh yes, I am a Christian. But then as I got older, I learned about even my own faults. So it made it very hard for me to identify with that.
Yeah.
So then it just made me want to think of like, okay, yes, I am a Christian. I am part of that. But most importantly, I'm part of what God is doing. So like you were saying, his way, his who he is. So that kind of identity doesn't really matter to me anymore.
Awesome.
More so what
That's
he's
interesting.
actually doing.
Cool.
I think that I probably have don't like it that much.
Probably.
But
Probably.
But I also think that there is a part of I kind of want to be called a Christian because I want to change people's minds about what it looks like to be a Christian.
That's really good.
Good.
And I think of one of the first years I was here, a friend of mine took me out for a beer and he was like, "You're like a Christian, like a whole day was in Africa Christian." And I was like, "Yeah."
That kind, yeah.
And he's like, "But you're really chill." And I was like, "Yeah, that's the point." And so I think I'm trying to come to grips with being called a Christian and identifying as one so that I can flip the narrative on what a lot of people's viewpoints of Christians actually is.
Yeah.
Good. I like that.
Yeah. I don't really like being called a Christian. Just to put
Shocked.
it out there.
Yeah.
I think as soon as people hear that you're a Christian and they have these false things that come up in their mind about what that looks like and preconceived ideas of what you should say and do, even being a pastor's wife, they're like, "Oh, you're a Christian, you're a pastor's wife," and then it's already that much harder to get to people, and to really be yourself and be authentic. But when you have that on top of it, it's just then you're having to battle with all their Christian demons that they've had to deal with their whole life.
Christian demons.
A lot of them.
And it's hard because Christianity has been used in negative ways for people sometimes, and sometimes it's not a positive thing. So I like to undo what people think Christianity is. So for me, I'm more comfortable in that state now, but 5 or 10 years ago would have been very hard for me to even say that. But now I can use it as a challenge, honestly, to tell people who he really is in just the most relaxed, comfortable way without the hype. So, yeah.
You like it, Jojo?
I think I actually struggle with it more than anyone would ever struggle with hearing that I am a Christian. I put sensitivity on other people that they're gonna struggle with it. Like the way I describe myself is kind of with this big but in the sentence that like, well, like here's this like part of me, but like I'm really chill and cool, or like Jesus is actually awesome. Like, you know, like I assume such a negativity on my Christianity that I like have noticed hasn't been automatically in someone. You know, like I've actually had the opposite where like someone opens up like, oh, like actually like I grew up in this church and like now I feel like I can like share my story because like you'll listen to it, where I just assume that they're gonna have like a negative response to it.
I love that.
I relate to that.
Yeah. That's really true.
That's similar to you then?
Yeah, very similar. I think for me, whether I'm being called that or not, I'm learning to just show up anyway. And I don't want to let that define me, or for me to define it, kind of like what you're talking about, and just define it with other people when it's a drawing point for people to come to you. So just for me, it's just like, well, whatever they think, it doesn't matter. Just show up, do what God has called you to do, and whatever else happens after that happens. But I'm not in control of any of those things.
Wow. Cool.
Yep.
Eric?
I don't mind either way. What I dislike is the weird narrative that people who claim to be following Jesus put out there, which then, because it's a label, because Christianity is a label, now we fall under that category. And so it's hard, like you were saying, I don't think Jesus likes to be put in a box. Well, I'm very similar to that. I don't like to be put in a box either. I don't think anybody does.
No.
And so I think that when it's used in that format, the easiest way for me to defuse it is just to say, well, I have a relationship with God.
That is a great way to defuse it.
It's not, I don't care what label you put on it. You can put any religious label you want. If you have a relationship with God, that is the most important starting point. So if we just start there, it diffuses a lot of things, but you know, there's a narrative out there that really is not helping the label of Christianity. So
Well, we all have a unique, actually looking around who's here, we all been raised somewhat Christian. In a Christian home. I know it wasn't perfect, but we all been in church, so we probably, more than any group that I could see, probably tend to think that there might be a negative perspective out there of what Christianity's like, because we've seen a lot.
Well, and I was the only one in my family that went to church. No one in my family went to church.
Gotcha.
I did it because it was cool in my like small town to go. But
90s culture.
Yeah, but I think it's also I learned because of that. I had to learn like what being a Christian actually was like for myself, and not for like my family or the people around me.
I've noticed in the last even 5 weeks or so that when I'm talking to people and I'm asking about their life and they ask me about my life, it comes up that I'm either pastor or I believe in Jesus, and there's a lot of openness out there, more than I've ever seen actually. So I'm very aware that my tendency to like, oh great, I gotta prove to them the kind of Jesus I know, can kind of distract us from just being relaxed and just asking them questions, and you'd be surprised. And if they don't like it, they don't like it. It's not a big deal. We don't have to defend Jesus. He's great at defending himself. But I like what you said. Like I used to be proud of it. Like we should at least carry. I have a relationship with Jesus like that. Being proud of I have a relationship with Jesus, and you might think I match Christianity. You might think I match this. I know there's a lot of division in Christianity, but it doesn't matter. I have a relationship with Jesus, and I'm proud of that. And that takes all kinds of forms these days.
It does.
Cool. Awesome. Anything else there?
Questions?
Hopefully no more surprise questions.
no more surprise questions. That'll do it for episode 3 of Ask a Pastor. David, what should people do if they want to see more of these videos?
Ask a pastor.
Like, follow, and subscribe.
Yeah.
Nice. Automatically. You're like, man, maybe David said that before.
Ask the podcaster.